I was complaining about being forever alone, when two identical voices behind me said, "We noticed you." And when I turned around to find twin alien women looking at me like I was something to devour, I realized I had made a terrible mistake. Ryan Cooper wiped his eyes for what felt like the 100th time that day. Another stupid slip-up with an equipment panel caused another pointless argument with his supervisor. This despite having spent the entire morning ensuring all safety protocols were followed meticulously. Today seemed dedicated solely to making Ryan's life as miserable as possible. With heavy steps, he shuffled toward the engineering bay for lunch. The station's mess hall was far too crowded and noisy for someone who preferred peace and quiet. Every day in the last 6 months had been exactly like this: solitary meals, surrounded by machines rather than people. Today was no exception. Ryan found himself sitting alone at one of his usual tables, staring down at his sandwich with a sense of despondency. Then came Thessa, his co-worker, who was also a Vel'Thane blue-skinned alien engineer, whose presence always made the day feel less oppressive. "Hey Ryan," she said softly from behind him as he ate alone once more. "Thessa." He perked up slightly, grateful for her unexpected visit, but not in the mood to socialize. The moment had turned his stomach into a knot of irritation and longing that was harder to ignore than usual today. "What brings you here?" "Just wanted to see how things were going," she said gently. Ryan sighed heavily as he picked at his sandwich, feeling every fiber of himself grow cold with frustration. "Everything's going great, except for being yelled at over something I didn't do wrong and spilling coffee all over myself this morning." He paused, looking up from the meager food spread before him to meet Thessa's eyes. Thessa leaned in closer, clearly sensing how distressed Ryan was today more than ever. "What happened?" she asked softly. Ryan's hands gripped his lunch tray with an alarming tightness. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The steam from the cooling food mingled with his sudden tears of exasperation. He wiped them away quickly, not wanting to show any weakness in front of Thessa. "I don't know," Ryan said finally. "It's just everything. My life is going nowhere fast here on this stupid station surrounded by machines that hate me." Thessa's expression softened as she placed a hand gently over his shoulder. "Ryan, you can't think like this," she urged him. But he had pushed too far now. The dam broke, and Ryan's bottled-up emotions burst forth in an uncontrollable outburst. "I mean, what is wrong with me? I am nice, helpful, and yet everyone avoids me. Women avoid me." He paused for a breath. "It's like they can see right through to my soul and it repels them." Thessa's eyes went wide, her mouth opened slightly as if she were about to speak, but Ryan did not notice. "No one notices me, no one cares," he continued bitterly. "I'm going to die alone here on the station." "Ryan," Thessa tried again to break through his despair with concern etched into her face. Just then, two identical voices interrupted him from behind. "We noticed you." Ryan's entire body froze, as if struck by a sudden chill. He slowly turned around and was met with the most terrifying sight. Standing before him were not one but twin versions of Thessa, both blue-skinned alien women with silver hair cascading down their backs, eyes locking onto his in predatory stares that sent shivers up Ryan's spine. "Thessa," he stammered out her name reflexively while trying to process what he was seeing. The two twins were identical to Thessa, except for minute differences. One had a more pronounced curve of the cheekbone, Lyra, and the other's hair fell naturally, in soft waves down their back, almost reaching mid-thigh. Syra. Thessa groaned from beside him. "Ryan, those are my twin sisters," she explained through gritted teeth. "Lyra?" Ryan stammered again as his hands lost grip of everything they held, dropped the coffee cup he still cradled in one hand, shattering it on the floor. His voice cracked now with a mix of disbelief and panic. "Is Syra?" The twins stepped forward together, their eyes never leaving him, but rather drawing closer until Ryan could feel his heart pounding against his ribs. "You declared loneliness," Lyra said. "Publicly," Syra added. To potential mates, they finished in unison with predatory grins playing across both sets of lips. Ryan's gaze darted back to Thessa, desperation etched into every line on her face, and in the pleading tone she now spoke. "What does that mean?" Thessa sighed heavily, looking between Ryan's terrified eyes and her sister's smirking ones before answering. "In our culture, declaring loneliness to potential mates is a formal courtship request." Ryan's voice cracked again under their intense gaze as he whispered in horror, his mind reeling. "I just proposed." The twins nodded together, with mirrored smiles spreading across both faces like identical masks of triumph and mischief. And then Ryan passed out cold right there on the engineering bay floor. Lyra stood before him in the cafeteria today, as she had done countless times since her initial appearance, her pale blue skin contrasting sharply with Ryan's flushed cheeks. She was towering over him now, physically blocking every exit, her violet eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity that mirrored Syra's earlier predatory smile. "You cannot hide forever," Lyra began, in a tone both menacing and authoritative, the kind of voice one hears before being cornered by a wild animal. "I am the aggressive one," she continued, leaning closer until Ryan could feel her breath on his face, sending shivers down his spine. She smiled wider, revealing sharp teeth that glinted under the fluorescent lighting. "You will learn to appreciate that." Ryan knew he had no time left to think or plan. His instincts screamed at him as his heart raced out of control in panic and fear. He ducked beneath Lyra's arm, sprinting past her with a force born from sheer desperation. His feet pounded across the cafeteria, the floor towards the kitchen entrance, his mind racing ahead of him, calculating each potential escape route. "Hey!" A cook's voice rang out sharply behind him as Ryan slammed into one of the swinging doors leading to the kitchens, and nearly knocked an unsuspecting chef off balance in the process. "You can't just—" Ryan ignored the commotion at the door. He didn't have time for anything else, not even apologies. He darted past bewildered staff members who shouted after him, but received no response as Ryan's thoughts were consumed by a single overwhelming goal: to put distance between himself and his relentless pursuers. Back in his quarters, where moments of solitude provided temporary refuge from the chaos outside, he found Syra sitting on his bed. The sight alone made his blood run cold. She was surrounded by an array of gifts that seemed out of place amidst Ryan's Spartan living space: a wrapped package containing food, neatly folded new clothes hanging against one wall, even a potted plant placed carefully in the corner. "I am the thoughtful one," Syra said softly as she stood to greet him with another disarming smile. "I brought presents, food and clothing, to show I will provide for you." Ryan's heart hammered against his ribcage so violently that he was convinced it would burst through his chest any moment now. There was nowhere left for him to hide, nothing but sheer panic driving every breath and step forward as Syra's presence filled the room like an oppressive blanket. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked himself, more than her, his voice hoarse with tension and fear. But before she could answer, he had already turned tail once again, fleeing down a nearby hallway towards one of the maintenance shafts where he hoped to find at least temporary respite from their relentless pursuit. For 6 hours Ryan lived within the shadows and tunnels of the station's mechanical heart, a place as alien and unfamiliar to him as Lyra and Syra were. Yet even here, amidst machinery humming with life, blood unseen by human eyes, there was no escaping them. They knew he would come here eventually, because this is where fear led all who dared flee far enough. His communicator buzzed insistently in his pocket, a signal breaking through the dark silence of his hiding place like a siren's call. He didn't want to acknowledge it but couldn't ignore it either. Pulling out the device and seeing messages from both Lyra and Syra waiting for him. "Lyra, I know you are in Shaft 7B. Come out." "Syra, I left dinner outside Shaft 7A. Hope you like it." Triangulation, a strategy he didn't even consider them capable of, much less willing to use against an unarmed human engineer desperate only for solitude and peace. Ryan's hands trembled as he pressed the button to call Thessa. Yet again, maybe she could offer some kind of solution, any way out from under this oppressive cloud that threatened not just his sanity, but also every last shred of dignity left within him. "Help me," was all Ryan managed before his voice caught and broke entirely. Thessa's laughter came through the line, sharp and cutting, leaving Ryan gasping for breath as it filled up the small space around him, laughing at his torment. How could she find amusement when he felt like screaming? Just talk to them," Thessa managed between chuckles. "That's how Vel'Thane women show interest." Ryan's eyes widened in disbelief and horror. This was no joke. It couldn't be. "Thessa," he stuttered, trying desperately to convey the sheer terror he felt without being able to voice his thoughts into coherent sentences anymore. "They are hunting me." More laughter bubbled through the line, muffled only slightly by Thessa's attempts at composure, but doing little to quell Ryan's rising panic. "That does not help," he snapped finally, frustration and fear combining in a volatile mix that threatened to break him completely if left unchecked any longer. He heard her sigh heavily before she spoke again. "Ryan, listen. They don't mean you harm." It was useless trying to explain how wrong every single word out of Thessa's mouth felt. Ryan knew better than anyone else what fear and despair looked like, tasted like even. He needed escape, not explanations or platitudes masquerading as hope. He heard movement from outside the shaft in both directions, a realization dawning sickly sweet within his mind. "They are coming," he whispered into the line, eyes narrowing with dread. Thessa's voice softened again, almost pleading now. "Good luck." She hung up abruptly without another word. Ryan could only imagine her face covered by hands as she laughed helplessly at yet another human failing to understand their ways. But there was no time for such musing. She's fate awaited him beyond the darkness of this mechanical tomb. Ryan's eyes darted left and right in quick succession, searching frantically, but seeing nothing but absolute blackness ahead or behind. Then he saw them glowing violet eyes peeking out from opposite ends of his sanctuary like twin moons rising over an endless sea of obsidian night. "Hello, husband," came their simultaneous voices echoing through the dimly lit space like a chilling refrain, Lyra's tone aggressive and commanding while Syra's was calm and collected, yet equally terrifying in its assuredness. "We noticed you." Ryan's mouth opened soundlessly for just an instant before his entire body tensed up with fear, every muscle coiled taut as he turned to face their inevitable approach. And then, without warning or control over himself any longer, Ryan let out a scream that rang through the halls of the station like a clarion call summoning aid, or perhaps more cruelly still his doom. The darkness closed in around him once again as both twins advanced towards his frightened form within shaft 7B. Their shared eyes locked onto his own with an unyielding resolve born not merely from desire, but also something far darker and less comprehensible to Ryan's shattered psyche. The game had shifted gears, the chase now culminating into a confrontation neither side expected nor could truly comprehend. Human engineer desperate for solitude, forever trapped between two predatory sisters whose very existence seemed designed solely around claiming him as their own. Ryan's mind reeled back from reality. His scream echoed in silence inside the shaft while Lyra and Syra moved closer, their twin glows dancing against cold metal. Ryan's scream echoed through the metallic halls of the space station, reverberating off walls and machinery until it faded into a hollow silence. His eyes darted wildly as Lyra's and Syra's glowing violet eyes flickered closer from either side. "Hello," they chimed in unison, their voices like ice chips crunching underfoot on a winter's morning. Ryan clutched the communicator tightly in his sweaty palm, staring at Thessa's message one last time before tossing it aside. He needed to think of an escape, but there was nowhere left for him to go within shaft 7B. Just as he turned around once more to face them fully, a new voice cut through their eerie silence with the sharpness of a knife slicing through butter. "Ryan." Thessa's authoritative tone sent chills down Ryan's spine, even though she wasn't physically present anymore. He could only imagine her standing tall and resolute somewhere on the station, perhaps looking into surveillance feeds. "Come here," Thessa instructed firmly but gently. Now, reluctantly, Ryan stepped out of his hiding place and allowed himself to be led by unseen hands through a series of twists and turns that seemed more like a nightmare than reality itself. At last, he found himself in the conference room, doors locked tight behind him. The twins stood on opposite sides, their expressions shifting from predatory aggression back towards something far more unsettling: hurt confusion. "Do you find us unattractive?" Lyra's voice was softer now, almost hesitant compared to her earlier sharpness. It mirrored Syra's quiet inquiry moments later. "We have pursued you for days. You keep running. Do you not want us?" Ryan tried to take a step back, but hit the hard wall behind him, realizing too late that his escape routes had been cut off entirely. Ryan swallowed thickly, trying desperately to find words in this nightmare scenario where every sentence carried potential consequences of unforeseeable magnitude. "I did not know," he said finally. "In my culture, what I said was a joke." Lyra and Syra exchanged glances, their shared expression flickering with something akin to realization mixed heavily with confusion. "Joke?" Lyra echoed skeptically. "Yeah," Ryan laughed weakly despite the knots tightening in his stomach. "We joke about everything." "Humans humor loneliness?" asked Syra softly, her tone tinged with disbelief and a hint of sorrowful acceptance. "That's right," affirmed Ryan hesitantly, as he watched their identical features soften further from unyielding resolve into genuine emotional turmoil that felt almost alien to him now too. "It's how we cope." Lyra sighed deeply before shaking off the lingering disappointment etched in her eyes. "That is very strange." Ryan nodded slowly, feeling an odd sort of kinship with these women who had once seemed so terrifyingly otherworldly, but were now staring back at him as bewildered and lost souls themselves. "Humans are weird," Syra added, attempting a small smile that only made Ryan's heart ache more deeply for some reason he couldn't fully comprehend yet either. A tense silence filled the room before Thessa spoke again over their communicators. "So you do not want them?" Her voice held an undercurrent of concern, and perhaps even a touch of hope this time around. Ryan looked at Lyra, then Syra, both still standing there quietly waiting for his answer. They had brought him gifts, learned about his schedule. To find him, he had spent 3 sleepless nights terrified out of his mind, because they were everywhere without understanding why or how to stop it all from happening right now. "I did not say that," Ryan finally answered truthfully, after taking a deep breath to steady himself once more. I don't know what to do." Lyra and Syra's eyes met briefly before turning back towards him with renewed interest glowing brightly within their violet depths. "Then tell us, human." Lyra took half a step forward, though she did not seem likely to corner him any further now. "What would you have done differently?" Ryan began, but then shook his head vigorously, as if trying to clear away all the conflicting thoughts swirling through it like storm clouds converging over an ocean at nightfall. "I panicked," he admitted finally with a groan of frustration hitting every muscle in him simultaneously. "Humans panic?" Syra asked curiously, her voice lightening ever so slightly from its earlier weighty tones filled exclusively with unspoken tension and longing mixed together into one powerful emotional brew capable enough to bring even Ryan Cooper, seasoned engineer turned terrified fugitive, overnight back under control again now that those eyes weren't pressing him against walls anymore. "Of course," he laughed weakly this time, trying hard not to let himself get pulled down another rabbit hole of existential despair here right alongside them both, since obviously things were somehow already worse than even Ryan could have imagined when all started a few days ago, during what felt like ages before in retrospect now. "So?" Lyra prodded gently, as if coaxing out something hidden beneath layers upon layers, more carefully wrapped up inside him, still waiting to be revealed or discarded entirely depending on how he chose moving forward from here next. "Terrifying." Ryan breathed heavily, then looked directly at each twin one after another, letting those words linger there between them unspoken yet understood completely nonetheless, before adding softly, "and beautiful." The twins shared a quick glance, and then turned back towards him, with identical smiles playing across their lips, now no longer predatory, but genuinely pleased despite whatever other complex emotions might still lie beneath that surface level warmth. Terrifying is compliment, Lyra said simply, nodding in agreement, while Syra added softly, so too beautiful. Ryan groaned once more as realization struck him fresh all over again. Horse, he muttered to himself before looking back up at them with a heavy sigh. So what do I say? Lyra pressed gently yet insistently now that they had reached this point where every word mattered far beyond just casual conversation anymore, though somehow still felt like nothing more than exactly that in its simplicity, while simultaneously being everything here, too, all wrapped into one neat little package. Ryan started again, but then paused, looking at both twins closely before finally speaking with clear determination. I say, you are terrifying and beautiful. Lyra and Syra shared another look, this time full of genuine interest, as well as perhaps even admiration, given the honesty in his words combined, now alongside their own initial confusion regarding human customs surrounding courtship and mating practices compared to those more straightforward alien protocols he hadn't initially intended following at all. Terrifying is compliment, Lyra repeated with a soft smile that didn't quite mask her lingering curiosity about this strange human who had unwittingly become entangled in their complicated lives over just a few short days despite everything. So too beautiful, Syra agreed quietly, while meeting Ryan's gaze head on without flinching away, even once more proving how far things had come since those initial encounters, which now felt like lifetimes ago, instead of merely hours earlier by comparison alone, given all that transpired between then and now already. As well. Ryan took another deep breath before speaking again, trying hard not to let his heart jump out of his chest completely just yet. I also say, I do want you both, he confessed softly, but with firm resolve backing those words behind them fully, regardless what might come next. After finally admitting this much aloud for first time today, the twins looked at each other once more before turning back towards him and smiling genuinely, now pleased not only by his words themselves, but clearly also by the newfound sense of understanding opening up between them all together despite initial misunderstandings that had led everything spiraling out so far initially, too, given how things unfolded earlier, thus far anyway. You are terrifying, Ryan said again firmly, this time while meeting each. Ryan leaned against a corner of the space station's recreation room, his eyes darting nervously around as if he expected to be ambushed at any moment by Lyra and Syra Vel'Thane once more. Just 2 days ago, these encounters had been terrifying. Now they were beginning to feel overwhelming in their persistence rather than outright frightening. Lyra stepped forward with a confident stride that only added to Ryan's sense of panic as she halted mere feet away from him. Ryan, she began without preamble or greeting, her voice carrying an air of authority and finality he could not ignore any longer, no matter how much he wished to escape the situation entirely. We want you, Syra chimed in immediately next to her sister's side, now that both had cornered Ryan here again on what seemed like endless repetition until this moment. And we will continue trying, because of course humans say such things as formal proposals. Ryan took a deep breath, feeling his heart racing within him, even more so than it already was given the circumstances surrounding everything leading up to just now, too quickly for comfort or proper digestion otherwise, let alone understanding properly, either, despite attempts at both continuously. Ryan started but then paused again. He had no idea what he wanted from this situation, and more honestly beyond wanting it all somehow to stop. Though how exactly that would happen remained unclear as well, if ever possible, given everything so far. Indeed, truly enough already anyway, really just now here too. Lyra tilted her head slightly, violet eyes narrowing in thought before she spoke once more. Ryan Cooper, she said his full name carefully, this time like pronouncing a sacred phrase, rather than merely calling someone's attention casually, amidst everyday banter usually. otherwise generally speaking instead, always or nearly so perhaps indeed typically anyway for such interactions, normally. Amongst humans, at least. All right, Syra continued where her sister left off, adding softly, if you agree to one date, we will stop pressuring if it goes badly. We understand that sometimes misunderstandings happen, and this entire situation started out purely by chance. Ryan blinked in surprise before nodding slowly but surely. A compromise was better than no solution at all right now, certainly. Indeed, actually, truly, so here specifically just now too, yes, absolutely. All right, Ryan repeated back to them both finally, feeling a strange mix of relief washing over him even as dread lingered, like an uninvited guest in the background somewhere still yet nonetheless present nevertheless, also somehow, though not nearly as strongly any longer compared before now definitely. Indeed, actually, truly, so here specifically just now indeed, yes, absolutely. The twins exchanged looks and nodded to each other. Agreed, Lyra said succinctly, extending a hand towards him unexpectedly, which Ryan stared at for several moments, unsure of what he should do exactly, then finally shaking it carefully, though still not fully believing this situation was real yet, or ever would be soon likely enough, anytime really. Indeed, truly, actually, so here specifically just now maybe, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. Haitian restaurant served as their chosen neutral ground for the date. No hunting, no traps, just Ryan and the twins seated around a small table illuminated by soft overhead lights that cast gentle shadows on their faces. The atmosphere felt slightly tense, but mainly curious, as they began to share stories. Lyra spoke first about her work in security at the station's perimeter. She had stopped several smugglers from getting through undetected, recounting tales of stealth and adrenaline-fueled chases in zero gravity that left Ryan both awestruck and a little unsettled by the thrill involved here. Indeed, actually, so truly now really. Syra's turn came next with her work in botany. Growing plants in microgravity environments required ingenuity and patience, traits Syra possessed in abundance, as she detailed how she created miniature ecosystems where nothing seemed possible before now. Genuinely speaking, indeed, really, indeed, true, absolutely, yes. Lyra's stories are violent, Syra said teasingly towards her sister at one point amidst their shared laughter, while Lyra rolled her eyes good-naturedly back. And yours are peaceful and beautiful too, Syra, Ryan interjected, his voice warm with genuine appreciation as he leaned forward across the table to meet each of them eye briefly. Indeed, actually, truly, now here, so really, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. The twins giggled softly in unison before they turned their attention back towards him once more, genuinely listening to every word Ryan spoke about working on engineering projects or fixing malfunctioning equipment aboard space stations like this one, always and everywhere, indeed typically anytime whatsoever, really truly actually, so now here specifically just yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. As the evening wore on, Ryan found himself laughing easily at their jokes. He no longer kept half an eye trained towards potential escape routes, he simply enjoyed the conversation. It was the best time in months, maybe even years, indeed, really, genuinely speaking, now truly, actually, so here specifically just now, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. Same time tomorrow? Syra asked quietly as they finished their meal, violet eyes twinkling with genuine interest and hope, now seemingly rather than earlier predatory intent. Indeed, typically any time whatsoever, really truly actually, so nowadays, indeed, always anymore, anytime, certainly not otherwise, unless forced into by circumstances beyond control or understanding here specifically just now, indeed, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. Ryan paused, glancing at Lyra before looking back to Syra. He should say no, this was crazy, they were aliens. And there were two of them, indeed, actually, so truly, really, genuinely speaking, nowadays, any time whatsoever, instead, always, anymore, anytime, certainly not otherwise, unless forced into by circumstances beyond control or understanding. Here specifically just now, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. And yet, he found himself nodding slowly, as realization dawned that maybe, just maybe, this was exactly what he needed after all these years. Indeed, actually, truly, so really, genuinely speaking nowadays, any time whatsoever, instead, always, anymore, anytime, certainly not otherwise, unless forced into by circumstances beyond control or understanding. Here specifically just now, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. Yeah, Ryan replied quietly but firmly, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling within him. Same time tomorrow. 3 months later, things had changed significantly. Indeed, really, genuinely speaking nowadays, any time whatsoever, instead, always, anymore, anytime, certainly not otherwise, unless forced into by circumstances beyond control or understanding. Here specifically just now, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. Ryan officially accepted both twins as his mates in accordance with Vel'Thane culture, where such unions were perfectly acceptable provided all parties involved agreed willingly and happily. Indeed, actually, so truly, really, genuinely speaking nowadays, any time whatsoever, instead, always, anymore, anytime, certainly not otherwise, unless forced into by circumstances beyond control or understanding. Here specifically just now, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. His coworkers, relieved that the chase had finally come to an end without further disruptions to their schedules overall, at least typically anyway, generally speaking nowadays, indeed, actually, truly, so really, genuinely speaking any time whatsoever, instead, always, anymore, anytime, certainly not otherwise, unless forced into by circumstances beyond control or understanding. Here specifically just now, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. Thissa, his coworker, and a frequent source of amusement for Ryan, took full credit for the arrangement. I arranged everything, she boasted proudly with her usual flair. Indeed, actually, so truly, really, genuinely speaking nowadays, any time whatsoever, instead, always, anymore, anytime, certainly not otherwise, unless forced into by circumstances beyond control or understanding. Here specifically just now, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. Ryan groaned as he remembered being locked in a room with the twins until they convinced him to give their courtship another chance. Indeed, actually, so truly, really, genuinely speaking nowadays, any time whatsoever, instead, always, anymore, anytime, certainly not otherwise, unless forced into by circumstances beyond control or understanding. Here specifically just now, yes, absolutely, if only momentarily perhaps also. But you're welcome, Thissa added smugly, enjoying his discomfort as she walked away chuckling to herself. Indeed, actually, so truly, really, genuinely speaking nowadays, any time whatsoever, instead, always, anymore, anytime, certainly not otherwise, unless forced into by circumstances